第93屆大會榮譽博士頒授典禮現在開始。The 93rd Congregation for the Conferment of Honorary Degrees commences. 請起立 Please rise.奏國歌，請保持肅立並把帽子脫下。Please remain standing and take off your caps for the national anthem.
I declare this congregation open.
請就座 Please be seated.
Jean David Block.
Leaders in education have more responsibility than ever in these uncertain times of rapid technological and social change, and in light of the existential challenge of securing a sustainable future for our world. Yet, in such times, there are also many opportunities through education and new knowledge to enrich all that it is to be human. As they have in the past, universities play a key role in shaping the future through our education, research, and community services. This is the ecosystem within which we at this university operate. And to address those challenges and benefit from the many opportunities, we understand that it extends far beyond our campus and city, across borders, in both the collaboration and friendly competition that spur on the progress of our activities. Institutions are, of course, made up of individuals. From the newest students to the person at the helm, each individual possesses the power to effect change. Collectively, they can nurture the university ecosystem and inspire those around them. Higher education's leaders who manage to build a legacy that advances the sector and serve as role models for their students and staff, the broader communities they serve, and their partners and competitors are important to us all. Today's honorand, Professor Jean Block, Chancellor of the University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA, is such a leader, admired across the world of higher education for the tangible progress his institution has made during his 17-year tenure. Professor Block is widely recognized as a steadfast advocate for high-quality, accessible, public higher education, ideals that resonate deeply with our own values at CUHK. Since assuming the role of Chancellor in 2007, he's consistently prioritized academic excellence, civic engagement, diversity, and financial security. Under his leadership, UCLA has enhanced its position as a leader in enrolling undergraduates from more disadvantaged or traditionally unrepresented backgrounds. For 7 years, it's been the highest-ranked public university in the United States, according to US News and World Report. And we, at CUHK, are proud to have become one of UCLA's international partners during Professor Block's leadership. UCLA being an institutional collaborator with the Asia Institute's Asia in the Humanities / Humanities in Asia initiative, for example, and engaging in extensive student and faculty exchange with us. Yet, within the next few weeks, Professor Block, now 75, will be stepping down as Chancellor. He will be able to leave his post satisfied that UCLA is well placed for its continued development. Its endowment grew from $2.2 billion to $7.7 billion during his tenure, in part due to a $5.49 billion fundraising campaign, one of the largest ever undertaken by a public university. And there are plans Professor Block laid that will extend the university's physical footprint and influence throughout Los Angeles. 2 grand challenges he set for UCLA to connect research to the greater good will continue. The first, Sustainable LA, is focused on transforming the city into a model green megacity. The second, the Depression Grand Challenge, aims to understand, prevent, and treat depression and halve its global health and economic impacts by 2050. The World Health Organization has long identified anxiety disorders as the single biggest economic burden of ill health across the developed world. 2 years before the COVID-19 pandemic, depression in the US was estimated to cost its economy more than $326 billion a year, having increased in its prevalence by about 1/3 since 2010. But it's a greater burden in the post-pandemic era. Professor Block has addressed other challenges in his role, for example, in taking a stand against anti-Semitism, racism, and anti-Asian hate and bias, as well as defending LGBTQ+ rights. Yet, despite being in charge of an institution comparable to a small to medium-sized city, with close to 46,500 students, 8,000 faculty members, and research grant income alone now reaching $1.6 billion a year, Professor Block still finds time for his own research and teaching as a neuroscientist, work to which he'll be devoting more time in the next phase of his career. Seemingly operating to his own high-energy circadian rhythm, retirement is not on his agenda. The focus of his research should be a particular response to the many of us who do not manage to get as much sleep as we need. He's made key discoveries about the biological workings of circadian rhythms across the sentient world, from the humble mollusk to the human. Currently, he's exploring the effects of aging on the nervous system and how it impacts biological timing in mammals, including humans. After leaving the Chancellor's role, he'll continue this work through his faculty appointments in psychiatry and biobehavioral sciences at the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA, and integrative biology and physiology at the UCLA College of Letters and Science. In his youth, Professor Block learned much about curtailed sleep. He was born in Monticello, New York, the grandson of immigrants from Hungary. His father and uncle owned mountain dairies, and during his high school summer holidays, he would be up by 4 a.m. to deliver dairy products to summer camps and hotels in the Catskill area. But he burnt the candle at both ends. On Saturday evenings, he'd play piano as part of a dance music trio in a resort. He was also an enthusiast for shortwave radio and still enjoys tinkering with his collection of about 50 antique radios. Academia beckoned him away from the mountains. First came a bachelor's degree in psychology from Stanford University, during which the 19-year-old Jean Block memorably sat in on a course delivered by a young Lawrence Lau, a mutual pleasure for our former Vice-Chancellor and the Chancellor of UCLA to recall during CUHK's 60th anniversary banquet. It was followed by a master's degree and PhD from the University of Oregon. In 1978, he joined the University of Virginia as a faculty member in the Department of Biology. Serving as Vice Provost for Research from 1993 to 1998, and then Vice President from 2001, he remained there until his academic career led him to UCLA. He was also the founding director of the National Science Foundation's Science and Technology Center in Biological Timing. This center's research has fundamentally changed our understanding of biological processes, such as the first identification, largely led by Joseph Takahashi, of the clock gene in a mammal, namely a mutant mouse. Professor Block's contributions to the development of higher education also extend far beyond the borders of UCLA. For example, serving on the executive boards of the Association of American Universities and the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities. And he's currently on the steering committee for the Association of Pacific Rim Universities, of which CUHK is a member. He's a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and recipient of numerous professional awards. One of the key roles of a leader is to empower others to succeed and lead. This is essential in a community as complex and enduring as a university. In this respect, Professor Block's greatest debt is owed to Carol, his wife of 54 years, who, as associate of the Chancellor, has helped women flourish as leaders on campus, supported student artists and women's athletic teams, and hosted student recitals, amongst other initiatives. The contributions that such partnerships make are beyond price. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, it's my great honor to present Professor Jean Block, who we can so greatly admire as a champion of public higher education and the wider public good, for the award of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, I present Jean David Block for admission to the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
By virtue of the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
James Joseph Heckman.
Back in the early 1960s in the USA, a young college student participated in the social upheaval of the America of his day. Among other life-influencing activities, he witnessed the extremes of inequality in his country on a road trip from Colorado to the Deep South with his Nigerian roommate. He was startled to see the fear among shopkeepers and hoteliers as the pair ignored the Jim Crow rules for racial segregation when blacks and whites in those areas could not share the same park bench, bus, or hotel, let alone education. He saw the effect of poverty and discrimination on the communities they passed through. That experience became a key motivation for his lifelong concern about the status of African Americans and a determination to fight against the barriers to social mobility that many have faced long after the formal end of racial segregation. It led to a 10-year research project that definitively established the importance of the 1964 Civil Rights Act on the status of African Americans. Fast forward 60 years, and that student continues to build on his passion and determination for understanding and addressing the causes of inequality in black communities and beyond in the US and around the world. He is today's honorand, Professor James J. Heckman, the Henry Schultz Distinguished Service Professor of Economics at the University of Chicago, and a pioneer in the field of microeconometrics. For the many in policymaking or philanthropists holding purse strings that he's influenced, such as the former US President Barack Obama, this is no dull, esoteric science, but something that's vitally important for the robust evaluation of public policies and for identifying initiatives that will reap the greatest returns for the individual and society. It provides necessary tools for all modern governments that are accountable to their populations, concerned with social justice, yet constrained by limited budgets. The difference Professor Heckman has made for public policy was globally acknowledged in 2000 when he shared the Nobel Prize in Economics for his work on the microeconometrics of diversity and heterogeneity within populations, and for establishing a sound causal basis for public policy evaluation. This is just one of numerous awards he's received, such as the Dan David Prize for Combating Poverty, the Frisch Medal, and the Chinese government's prestigious Friendship Award. Longitudinal studies of individuals' life journeys, from their preschool years in the late 1960s and 1970s to the present, along with evaluations of various interventions, identify a clear root cause and solution for greater equity of opportunity. It lies in the earliest years, when the foundations for crucial cognitive and non-cognitive skills are laid. The data Professor Heckman has analyzed from the Perry Preschool Intervention Program and others demonstrate that with a sound start in life, children are more likely to flourish as adults and contribute more to society. They also cost significantly less to the state in being more likely to avoid lives of crime and having fewer healthcare needs related, for example, to obesity or the consequences of alcohol and tobacco dependence. Two of his latest projects, the China Reach that he's helped lead, and his novel analyses of the Jamaica Reach Up and Learn program, build on this evidence, support the development of less advantaged communities in both nations, and act as models for others. Professor Heckman is hence now renowned as a leading champion of early childhood education and development in both preschool and family settings. He's calculated that the returns on public investment can be as much as 14% in terms of economic benefits for the individual and community. These advantages can be seen to be passed on through generations as the Perry preschool children have become parents. As a result of such evidence, preschool education is no longer the Cinderella of schooling systems, including locally in Hong Kong, where its professional upgrading and funding support, targeting in particular the less privileged, have been an important element of education reforms. However, Professor Heckman's studies extend beyond educational service provision. We also need to nurture effective parenting and childcare from birth. before inequalities, in particular in the non-cognitive skills that will beget more skills, set in. On this, Novak Djokovic is a disciple, unbeknown to Professor Heckman. The Novak Djokovic Foundation cites his research and has chosen quality preschooling and parent education and support in disadvantaged communities as the focus for its work. Professor Heckman has been highly vocal in his critique of policy obsessions with narrow academic scores and national rankings derived from the PISA study, the Programme for International Student Assessment run by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, as measures of the outcomes of education. The OECD seems to have heard and responded to his concerns by inviting him to contribute to the study's new measures related to broader non-cognitive abilities in his role as senior advisor for the PISA 2021 questionnaire expert group. With Tim Kautz, he wrote the working paper, Fostering and Measuring Skills, Improving Cognitive and Non-Cognitive Skills to Promote Lifetime Success, and advised the PISA board on the need to collect new character-related data. Among the non-cognitive abilities that Professor Heckman has shown are at least as important as academic scores are motivation, perseverance, and conscientiousness. Character skills developed through childhood that are essential for a young person to build more skills and knowledge through their education, secure and retain a job, and go on to lead happy, more stable family lives. They would also have been key ingredients for his own achievements across his life. Professor Heckman was born into a humble and devoutly Christian family in Chicago before the end of World War II. At the age of 8, he was already a child minister, expecting the church to be his life calling. But during his high school years in Lakewood, Colorado, he began turning towards more earthly academic interests. His intellectual curiosity was sparked by Frank Oppenheimer, whose brother Robert directed the Manhattan Project to develop the atomic bomb. Frank was barred from working alongside his brother because of his Communist Party membership, and he retreated to a cattle ranch in Colorado, from which he was initially persuaded to teach at a nearby school. Later, when he moved to Boulder, Jefferson, he became part of a program to offer advanced teaching to a county-wide cohort of selected students. Bird and Sherwin's masterly biography of Robert Oppenheimer details the tensions between expertise, security, and politics that led to this exclusion and to the post-war treatment of the Oppenheimer brothers. But one detail that does not emerge is that amongst the bright students who learned physics from Frank Oppenheimer was James Heckman, who's written of how he was inspired by his tutor to appreciate the beauty and power of experimental science, and that theories, however beautiful, must ultimately tie into empirical evidence. While the Manhattan Project spawned Nobel Prize winners, its leader, Robert Oppenheimer, was never one. Frank Oppenheimer is widely admired for having founded the San Francisco Exploratorium to spread the public understanding of science. But it's good to know that in a period that he must have thought of as exile, he also helped inspire another extraordinary mind who eventually won a Nobel Prize too. Liberal arts education at Colorado College further sparked that student's curiosity in subjects ranging from philosophy and history to mathematics, the discipline for his bachelor's degree, and eventually economics. He gravitated towards the latter because of its practical power to address socio-economic challenges in society, he said. He went on to complete his MA and then PhD in economics at Princeton University, where his thesis focused on labor supply and the demand for goods. After spending early periods of his career at New York and Columbia universities, the University of Chicago has been his academic home since 1973. There, he was one of the founders of the Harris School of Public Policy, and in 2014 launched the Center for the Economics of Human Development, which he continues to direct. He also holds an appointment with the university's law school. Professor Heckman's work is grounded in economics, but to get to the heart of major socioeconomic problems, he well understands that it's essential to draw in other disciplines, a lesson learnt in part from his late wife, the sociologist Lynn Pettler, whom he married in 1979. Together, they raised a son and a daughter who followed in their parents' footsteps by both becoming successful academics. In 2010, he set up the Human Capital and Economic Opportunity Global Working Group, now an international network of over 500 scholars, that he co-directs as the platform for collaboration in fields ranging from genetics and epidemiology to psychology and neuroscience. In this, and his many other appointments, he's been extraordinarily prolific. The obvious measures being the more than 370 academic papers and 9 books, such as The Myth of Achievement Tests, the GED, and the Role of Character in American Life, and Giving Kids a Fair Chance, to his name. Professor Heckman has also shared his expertise with this university in Hong Kong, as Distinguished Professor at Large with the Lau Chua Tak Institute of Global Economics and Finance, while he and the University of Chicago's Center for the Economics of Human Development have particularly fruitful ongoing collaborations with researchers in mainland China. Work with Jinan University's Institute for Economic and Social Research and the China Development Research Foundation helps guide Chinese policies in strengthening early childhood education and development and addressing other areas of inequality. This has been developing initiatives in impoverished rural areas and contributing further evidence of conditions for human flourishing, a partnership that's made him a special friend of China, as reflected in the Friendship Award he received in 2019. Professor Heckman is a friend. Of the numerous students, colleagues, and collaborators who've benefited from his extraordinary wisdom, energy, and support. Of the decision makers, and many in public policy, who use the fruits of his work, and of the children whose lives he has improved, particularly those born into more disadvantaged circumstances. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, it's my great honor to present Professor James J. Heckman, who's given so much as a most eminent friend for humanity, for the award of Doctor of Social Science, honoris causa.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, I present James Joseph Heckman for admission to the degree of Doctor of Social Science, honoris causa.
By virtue of the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Social Science, honoris causa. Congratulations.
Paul Maxime Nurse.
On the 21st of January 1665, my sevenfold great-uncle Samuel Pepys stayed up notably late until well after midnight. He was reading a large and sumptuous book he had just acquired. It was written and illustrated by Robert Hooke and had just been published under the auspices of the Royal Society. It was called Micrographia, and it contained very large drawings of very small things as viewed through a microscope. Pepys wrote that it was the most ingenious book that ever I read in my life. Its remarkable drawings, Hooke had been apprenticed with Lely, the leading court portraitist of his time, made it a bestseller. The human flea is an extraordinary, if alarming creature when seen vastly magnified. But perhaps the most influential illustration is much less artistically striking. It shows the appearance of a thin slice of cork, which, when magnified, resembles the structure of honeycomb, so much so that Hooke called the tiny box-like structures of which cork is composed cells. It was the first time that anyone had seen and reported on these tiny yet crucial biological units. The life you can see around you, whether moss or redwood, and from gnats to whales, starts out the same way, as a single cell. It doesn't matter whether we're destined to be gigantic or tiny. We grow to our adult size through successive cell divisions. But what determines whether or not a cell will divide into new cells, which themselves divide into yet more cells, and so on? Why don't they go on forever, proliferating exponentially? Proper control is essential for normal growth. We need not only to start growing, but we also need to stop at the right point. The cell cycle, which controls whether or not cells divide, is thus central to normal development. Failures might not only make us the wrong size or wrongly proportioned, cancers, too, are a form of uncontrolled cell proliferation. So understanding how it works and how it can go wrong is a central question in biology. Professor Paul Nurse's experimental life has been dedicated to resolving this question. It wasn't all plain sailing. Paul Nurse was born in Norfolk, but while he was still young, his parents moved to the Greater London district. There he attended a primary school, which he distinctly enjoyed and to which he walked every day. That journey, often made on his own, took him through some undeveloped land and across a large park, and what he saw around him and above him kindled his interests in the natural worlds of biology and astronomy. He passed the National 11+ exam, which split secondary schooling into 2 streams and sent him to the nearby grammar school, which lay within the highly selective and academic branch of the English school system of that era. Yet it was, for various reasons, less welcoming than the place he'd left. He nonetheless retained and developed his interest in biology and was good at it. That should surely have taken him to university, but he wasn't good at French. You may well wonder why that should matter to a would-be biologist, but it did. Successful applicants to a UK university in the 1960s needed not only to be proficient in their specialist subject, but also to have a basic modern language qualification, most commonly French, which was widely taught at school. If your French wasn't good enough, it didn't matter how good you were at your actual degree subject, you wouldn't get a place. In some ways, that was an admirable requirement for a literally insular nation lying a short distance from the European mainland. But it could also be disruptive. For the young Paul Nurse, it meant that his initial route to biological research was through working as a technician rather than becoming an undergraduate. His workplace was a microbiology laboratory. It belonged to the Guinness Company, a distinctive giant among brewers, and brewers know a lot about yeast. Making beer is both an art and a science that humans have practiced for thousands of years. The principle's simple. Extract sugars from grain to make a sweet liquor and add yeast, which ferments it into alcohol. Strains of the same Saccharomyces species make the alcohol in beer and wine and the bubbles in bread. A lot of work has gone into finding strains that give quick or slow fermentations, or impart different flavors, or can be dried and reconstituted so we get the tastes, textures, and convenience that we want. But beyond that, yeasts have become very important to microbiologists because they are eukaryotes, which means that they're representative of plants and animals generally, yet they're also single-cell organisms. That makes them easy and safe to grow, maintain, manipulate, and study in a laboratory. So much so that some consider them the ideal model organisms for modern molecular biology. Finding yourself in a brewer's laboratory could thus offer more opportunities than just the raw material for parties. As things turned out, Paul Nurse's basic duties in the Guinness laboratory took up only 2 days a week. Outside that, he conducted his own research. This was because he had a perceptive lab head who could spot talent and saw it. and found a way to encourage it. The results captured the interest of a professor at Birmingham called John Jinks, who found a way to make a place available, French or no French. History has demonstrated that it was a seriously good decision. Birmingham provided not just intellectual excitement, but also an opportunity to explore possible futures in biology. Ecology? Fascinating in theory, but far too cold in practice out in the field, or more specifically in the sea. Laboratories represent a more comfortable environment both for experimenters and their subjects. Animals? Paul Nurse's first introduction to that cell cycle which became his research life was through undertaking a project on the division of fish eggs, but one that he characterizes as having been disastrous. Plants? Perhaps they might offer a better way into developmental biology. So that was the initial route that he took, though turning his research program into the extraordinary success that it eventually became took time, travel, flexibility, and resilience. From Birmingham, he went to the University of East Anglia as a research student studying molecular changes during the cell cycle, which took him back once more to yeast. At times, he found the sheer difficulty of making progress in experimental research deeply disheartening, but he stuck with it and started to plan a postdoctoral career, developing further ideas for using a genetic approach to understand cell reproduction in yeasts. That meant building on a genetic approach pioneered by Lee Hartwell in the US, but translating it into a different yeast species, which itself meant mastering and combining techniques developed in two further laboratories, one in Switzerland and the other in Scotland. Yet, within a matter of presumably fascinating yet frantic months, the key connections were made and the new project was up and running. From it emerged the identification of a key controller of the yeast cell cycle, the CDC2, meaning cell division cycle 2 gene. From this, and from its connections to work going on in other model systems, developed a cascade of further experiments and observations, including his own team's identification of the human version of the gene. In 2001, this extraordinary body of work was recognized by the award of a Nobel Prize, shared with Tim Hunt and Lee Hartwell, for their discoveries of key regulators of the cell cycle. Paul Nurse, by then Sir Paul Nurse, was 51. If he hadn't told us how hard it was, at times, that brief summary would make it look as easy as floating among the clouds, which, as a serious glider pilot, he can tell you isn't as easy as it looks either. The autobiographical details that tell his story on the Nobel Institute's website exemplify eloquence and generosity and end with a startling coda which you should read for yourselves one day. He conveys not only a passion for science, both its beauty and its practical importance, but also a deep sense of our responsibilities as communities of scientists. The exceptional importance of his research has led to honours and awards far too numerous to list here, and I shall touch only on a small subset of the positions he's held, plus one that he didn't hold. Years ago, I tried to persuade him to return to Oxford to take up a statutory chair. I failed. In the event, his still grander roles as president of the Rockefeller University, his appointments in the major cancer research charities in the UK, his current position as director of Europe's biggest biomedical laboratory, the Francis Crick Institute in London, as well as his time as president of the Royal Society, an office once held by Samuel Pepys, with whom I started this citation, all reflect widespread recognition and deep appreciation of his commitment to science, to education more generally, and to humanity. I represent the admiration of many when I say, Mr. Vice-Chancellor, it's my great pleasure and my honor to present Sir Paul Nurse for the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, I present Paul Maxime Nurse for admission to the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa.
By virtue of the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa.
Pan Jianwei.
鲁班削竹木做了只会飞的喜鹊，可以飞3天不下来，并自认巧妙。墨子却认为，倒不如削3寸木料，做个车匣，能承载50石的重量，更有意义，并叹谓：利于人谓之巧，不利于人谓之拙。那就是说，对人有利的技术才叫做巧，无利于人的叫做拙。潘建伟教授不仅是量子信息实验研究领域的开拓者之一，而且把理论构想推进到现实应用，对国家有功，对人类有利，堪称为巧，实不为过。潘建伟教授来自浙江东阳，本科和硕士就读于中国科学技术大学近代物理系，毕业后赴籍奥地利，先在因斯布鲁克大学攻读实验物理专业博士，在维也纳大学取得博士学位后，在该校担任博士后及高级研究员。2001年归国，返回母校工作，在近代物理系任职教授，于2011年当选中国科学院院士。目前，他担任中国科学技术大学常务副校长，并兼任中国科学院量子信息与量子技术创新研究院院长。墨子做了小孔成像实验，是人类史上的首创，并提出光学8条，发现了光沿直线传播的原理，奠定了现代光学的基础。2000多年后，潘教授把量子光学的应用推向高峰。他主要从事量子光学、量子信息、量子力学基础问题检验等方面的研究，利用量子光学手段，在量子调控领域取得了一系列重大突破，拙见颇多，技术精巧，使量子信息实验研究成为近年来物理学发展最迅速的方向，成就非凡。从欧洲学成归国的潘教授，在母校组建了量子物理与量子信息实验室。早在2003年，当时大多数人仍埋首于实验室内部的原理性演示之时，他已萌生通过卫星实现天地一体化网络的构想，描绘广域量子通信的蓝图，为此开展了一系列先驱性的实验研究。经过多年艰苦攻关，潘教授团队使卫星量子通信成为可能，最终成功研制全球第一颗量子科学实验卫星，于2016年8月16日发射升空。这颗量子科学实验卫星就是命名为墨子号。潘教授认为，墨子是非常伟大的光学家，而我们现在做量子通信和量子卫星所用的手段都是光或者光量子，用墨子为 量子卫星命名，除了纪念这位先贤的成就，更是为了展现我国的科研自信。量子通讯基于量子物理学的基本原理，克服了经典加密技术内在的安全隐患，是目前唯一能够实现信息理论可证安全性的通信方式，可以大幅提高国防、金融、政务、商业等领域的信息安全水准，确实巧同造化。如何提升现实安全性，实现长距离可实用化的量子通信，正是最大的挑战，也是国际学术界的奋斗目标。潘教授利用墨子号率先完成了一系列具有开创意义的空间量子科学实验，验证了通过卫星实现全球化安全量子通信的可行性。既新且巧的研究成果，使我国牢牢占据了空间量子科学研究领域的引领地位。墨子号的成功，让潘教授团队对光子的操控达到了精巧的极致，故而推动了整个光量子信息处理的飞跃。2020年开始，潘教授团队研制成功9张光量子计算原型机，并不断升级，向世人展示了量子计算系统处理特定问题的能力，能远远超越最强的经典超级电脑，达到量子计算优越性。先前的巧思和现代的突破再次交织，令人赞叹。墨子号和9章肯定不是鲁班那只会飞的喜鹊，而是墨子的车匣，能传送大量的信息，满载自信的希望，强国利人。新巧的研究成果在国际上有重要的影响力，也为潘教授带来诸多殊荣。他的研究成果多次入选《自然》《科学》等杂志评选的年度重大科学进展。他曾获欧洲物理学会菲涅尔奖、国际量子通信奖、美国科学促进会克利夫兰奖、美国光学学会伍德奖、蔡司研究奖等国际奖项，也曾获国家自然科学奖1等奖、改革先锋奖章、量子信息研究的创新者等国家奖项和称号。此外，他目前担任93学社中央副主席、全国政协委员等职务，服务社会，贡献祖国。量子新星愿强国，科研巧妙称绝群。校长阁下，潘建伟教授的量子信息研究敢为天下先，成就有目共睹。他辛勤的付出，让我国在相关领域的研究实现从跟跑迈向并跑的跨越，甚至有领跑的飞跃，可谓功在当前，利在千秋。为表扬潘教授科研新巧，利国利人，本人谨恭请校长阁下颁授荣誉理学博士衔与潘建伟教授。
校长阁下，请颁授荣誉理学博士学位与潘建伟。
本人秉承大学所赋予之权利，授予你荣誉理学博士学位。
Professor Jean David Block will now deliver an address.
It is a great privilege for me to be asked to speak on behalf of my esteemed fellow honorees, Professor James Heckman, Director of the Center for the Economics of Human Development at the University of Chicago, Sir Paul Norris, Chief Executive Officer of the Francis Crick Institute, Professor Pan Jianwei, who's Professor of Physics at the University of Science and Technology of China. All of us are deeply thankful to CUHK for this recognition. An honorary degree is an acknowledgement of achievement for which we are all very appreciative. But it's also a call for all of us to continue the work for the greater good. I assure you that each of us will answer that call. We are particularly grateful to receive this honor from such a remarkable institution. CUHK was established only 60 years ago, making it much younger than many other universities in the West. Yet it has made outstanding progress in this time. While that progress has spanned a number of areas, I will mention just 5. First, among CUHK's strength is its academics excellence. CUHK is renowned for its rigor and consistently ranks among the top universities globally, which is an exceptional feat for such a young university. Second, CUHK has become a hub for research with world-changing implications, particularly in the fields of medicine, engineering, and the sciences. It has also served as one of the premier centers for Chinese cultural research and has been a leader in promoting Chinese culture and heritage. Third, CUHK is a great proponent of global collaboration. The university has established many partnerships with the top universities worldwide and has facilitated a robust exchange of students, faculty, and ideas. This includes a 50-year partnership between CUHK and the University of California's Study Abroad program. CUHK alumni have also made major contributions in their own right. The university's graduates have become leaders in academia, government, business, and many other fields. Their contributions have fueled China's recent growth and success. This has really been extraordinary. And finally, CUHK has been a pioneer in promoting sustainability and combating climate change on its campus and beyond, launching green initiatives and supporting prominent environmental research programs. Personally, during my 17 years as Chancellor of UCLA, throughout this time, and as chair of the Association of Pacific Rim Universities, and really throughout my whole career, I've been deeply impressed by this university. My connections and relationships with colleagues here have meant a great deal to me. Over the past several years, I've worked very closely with President Rocky Tuan as we've helped guide the Association of Pacific Rim Universities. President Tuan brings a wealth of experience to international networks. He is smart and ethical, and working with him is a delightful and rewarding experience. I've also, as mentioned, had the great honor of taking an economics class many years ago at Stanford from CUHK's former president, Professor Lawrence Lau. Professor Lau was a young, brilliant assistant professor when I sat in his class nearly a half a century ago. I know he has accomplished much in his career at Stanford and then in his leadership of CUHK. As I near the end of my tenure as UCLA's chancellor, I've been reflecting on the colleagues and institutions that have played an important role in my professional life. I am deeply appreciative of the time I've spent at CUHK and throughout China, and I'll always be thankful for the partnerships and friendships we have formed. My fellow honorees and I extend our deepest gratitude to CUHK for this wonderful recognition. Thank you.
I declare this congregation closed.
請起立. Please rise.